Good evening, and thank you, Ned. I'm Marlene Trestman, and I'm honored to participate in tonight's Jewish Roots Jubilee. We're marking 75 years since the closing of the Jewish Children's Home, as it was last known, in 1946, and the rebirth of the organization into the life-changing social service agency the JCRS is today. Among its many programs, the JCRS offers scholarships for college, vocational training, and summer camping. It provides services for children with special needs and instills in families with small children the joys and knowledge of Jewish heritage. In keeping with tonight's theme, I'm going to trace the deep roots of JCRS's modern services through the organization's rich and colorful history. The roots of JCRS's modern services run back to the founding of the home for Jewish widows and orphans in 1855, spanning the home's two locations on Jackson Avenue and later on St. Charles Avenue, and through at least 5 different names. Each of these names reflects the organization's evolving mission, which in turn adapted to address the needs of the community in keeping with evolving standards of childcare. By 1946, the Home's board, guided by expert evaluations it commissioned, gave way to the changing times. As a population, parents were living longer and earning more, so there were simply far fewer cases of indigent orphans and half-orphans, while at the same time, federal, state, and local governments were now providing financial support to enable parents to keep children in their family home. Perhaps most important, the Homes Board recognized that children are best served in their own homes whenever possible, and that the care and placement of dependent children must be guided by professional standards of social work and not by lay volunteer boards, no matter how well-meaning. After the last of the Home's children were appropriately placed, some back with their own family, others at Belfair in Cleveland, Ohio, or in foster care with private families, Home President Justin Wolfe was disturbed by the widespread rumors around town that the Home was now a defunct institution. Nothing could be further from the truth, he told the crowd assembled for the annual meeting in early 1947. We are actively supervising the field work in this area. Under modern views, where placing a child in a group home is the exception and not the rule, this is an important activity. So even though it stopped being a place to live, the Home, as a non-residential agency, continued to nurture kids throughout the South, helping them to thrive and overcome life's obstacles. As you heard, I too am one of those kids, and I remain grateful for the services I received. In addition to counseling by social workers and oversight of my foster care placement, I received scholarships for an excellent education at Newman School and at Goucher College, and for 8 glorious summers at Camp Barney Meddens, a Jewish sleepaway camp. And those summers were as therapeutic as they were fun. I'll start by tracing the roots of JCRS's educational mission. From the Home's founding on Jackson Avenue at Chippewa Street, its children's education, both religious and secular, was a priority. In terms of religious education, for the first 70 years, or until about 1926, the children studied Hebrew and Jewish history almost entirely within the home. In this photograph, most likely taken in the 1890s in the home on St. Charles Avenue, you can see Home Superintendent Michelle Hyman teaching a Hebrew class with the words Shalom Aleichem prominently drawn on the blackboard. High holidays and Shabbat services were conducted in the little synagogue inside the home on St. Charles Avenue, with sermons specially written for the children, including by Superintendent Leon Vollmer, the only home superintendent who was an ordained rabbi. The home offered New Orleans' first children's services, which were regularly attended by the community. The biggest change in the children's religious education and worship came in 1926, with the full support of the city's rabbis and home president Jacob Warren Newman. Superintendent Ed Lashman closed the home synagogue. Instead, the children were distributed among the city's 3 Reform congregations, Sinai, Touro, and Gates of Prayer, for worship and for their religious education through confirmation. The children shown here were the last to be confirmed in the home. As for their secular education, for the home's first 50 years, the children were educated in New Orleans public schools, except for occasional interruptions during the chaos of civil war and epidemics. In those cases, and for all those too young to attend the public schools, the children were educated inside the orphanage by teachers the home employed. As shown in this excerpt from the home's 1885 annual report, 84 of the home's 140 children were being taught in the public schools. The other 56 were being taught in the home's kindergarten, one of the earliest in the city, which was established during the term of home president Edwin Kersheet only 1 year earlier. Born from the educational philosophy of Friedrich Froebel, the home's kindergarten served as a training ground for many of the city's early kindergarten teachers. Notice the divided and concentric circles on the floor, which were actually painted in bright primary colors. At the time, this was a novel device to stimulate the children's senses and encourage physical movement. Superintendent Hyman, who served from 1886 to 1909, earned a national reputation in the field of kindergarten work and was honored in his lifetime by having one of the city's kindergartens named for him. After the home established its kindergarten, the board turned its attention to the education of its older children, whom they believed were not being properly educated in the public schools. The home's board wanted to provide its wards with the kind of education and training that would equip them to overcome life's hurdles after their discharge to become independent and productive American Jewish citizens. Perhaps the most well-known aspect of the home's program in secular education was the Isidore Newman Manual Training School, which the home opened in October 1904. The school was pioneering for several reasons. It was the first manual training school in the city and state. To be clear, manual training was not mere vocational or industrial training. Instead, the pedagogy emphasized the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, as much as the 3 H's, head, heart, and hand. Newman's manual training was always an academically robust curriculum. It's just that the cutting-edge method was to teach the head by using the hands and the heart, and thus the Newman motto, Deshimus agere agendo, we learn to do by doing. In these 1905 Newman School photos, although you may not be able to read it, but there's a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson on the blackboard in the upper left photo of the 6th grade and a geography lesson on the blackboard in the upper right photo of the 8th grade. The school's other pioneering aspect is that it was founded to educate the home's children first, but was open, regardless of religion, to other children, albeit then only white children, whose parents paid tuition. The home's board was determined to give its children a superior education side by side with other children from the community. In doing so, the home's creation of the Newman School remains unique. It may be the only such relationship in the country between a religious institution and a private co-ed secular school. Now, all of the home's children started at Newman School and remained there throughout the lower grades, but not all home children graduated there. Before each child reached high school, around 8th grade, the home and Newman's faculty made sure that the academically rigorous school was the best fit for each home child. As you can see from this excerpt of the board's 1930 minute meetings, of the 34 home kids listed here, only 3 were recommended to remain at Newman. Aside from the 9 children being considered for discharge, the rest were recommended to attend one of the public schools that had emerged since Newman first opened. For girls, there was the Joseph Cohn Commercial High School and Francis T. Nichols Vocational School. And for the boys, there was Samuel J. Peters Commercial High School and Delgado Central Trade School, in addition to the long-standing private Soule Business College. In making these individualized recommendations, the Homes Board considered not only each child's academic record, but also their interests, as reflected by the notes about Naomi Cantor becoming a physical training instructor and Ralph Bierman's then interest in aviation. By my count, of the more than 1,300 students who graduated by Newman by the time the home closed, only 93 were from the home. Pictured here are a few of the home's Newman graduates, starting with Louis Furstenberg, the home's first Newman graduate in 1911, and ending with James Whitehead, the home's last Newman graduate in 1947. The home's individualized approach to education paid off for many of its children. In 1924, for example, with her certificate from Francis T. Nichols School in Millinery Studies, Sarah Lampert promptly landed a job in her field with the Marks Isaacs Company and used part of her first earnings to pay the $5 dues to join the Homes Alumni Association. To earn business credits to graduate from Joseph Cohn High School in 1932, Fanny Mashinka worked at Maison Blanche, where she pleasantly surprised her boss by selling a gross of ladies' underwear to one customer, and then later got a job in Houston, where she was the first person to run a switchboard with a broadcasting system. In 1937, Woody Polawata graduated from Samuel Peters High School, where he was valedictorian of his class and won a scholarship to LSU. During medical school, he returned to the home to work as a student counselor, where he was fondly remembered as a terrific role model. Harry Kovner was also grateful for the home's personal attention to his education. Recognizing the boy's interest in mechanics, Superintendent Harry Ginsberg recommended that Kovner finish his education at Delgado Trade School. There, Kovner's interest in mechanical drafting blossomed, and he earned a special wartime diploma that enabled him to get his first job in what turned out to be his lifelong and very satisfying career in plumbing contracting. Ralph Bierman as well prospered from this approach. After several years enjoying Newman's academic courses and his classes in stenography and cabinetry, Ralph was offered the opportunity as well to transfer to Delgado. Spurred by his love of machinery, Ralph jumped at the chance, soon settling his focus on metalwork and drafting. With that training, and apparently having set aside his interest in aviation, he was able to support himself after leaving the homes with jobs in machine shops. In addition to these studies, he also appreciated being introduced to 2 different worlds of people, meaning the wealthy kids who went to Newman and the students at Delgado who Ralph said represented the real world. Looking back from his position as president and CEO of a national industrial business, Ralph praised his combined education at Newman and Delgado. He said, "I don't believe I could have gotten that exposure to life anywhere else." Just as JCRS today provides financial aid to assist with college education and professional training, so did the home, thanks to the fund established in 1907 by Henry Newman, who served as home president from 1888 to 1892. Among its many recipients, in 1913, the fund helped Harry Goldstein attend pharmacy school, where he graduated among the top in his class and pursued a career in New Orleans as a pharmacist. In December 1919, Louise Fieldschmidt attended Newcomb College, with the home contributing to her dormitory and other expenses from the Henry Newman Educational Fund. At Newcomb, Louise was elected first vice president of the student body, captain of her class basketball team, all while earning extra money as dorm counselor and assistant librarian. In 1929, Louise's younger brother Hugo thanked the home for helping with his dental school training, and he hoped that the board's, quote, judgment and confidence in me be vindicated by my future conduct and achievement. Hugo practiced dentistry in Dallas until he retired in 1967, except for his World War II Army service, during which he was taken prisoner while attempting to rescue 300 wounded servicemen, earning Bronze and Silver Stars and a Purple Heart. With the home's help, Miriam Tannenbaum attended Touro Nursing School, where she received the cape shown here. Helen Gold received funds to help pay for her education at LSU and Tulane School of Social Work. To repay her gratitude, she started her own education fund at JCRS and said, so that others can benefit just as I did when needing help to complete my education. JCRS's Camp Scholarship Program, too, has strong roots back to the home. For kids who lived there from 1918 on, the single most beloved experience among home alumni was going to the Federation's summer camp at Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. It was Superintendent Leon Vollmer's idea to get the kids out of the city's hot and humid summer and into nature with fresh air and open water. From the moment the children boarded the Louisville and Nashville train for the 50-mile ride, in itself a thrilling experience, they were free from all routine activities and regulations. Swimming in the Gulf, fishing from a rowboat or pier, singing, reading in the pavilion, and hikes through the woods, all at their choosing, gave the children a fresh outlook while aiding what Vollmer called their physical, mental, and moral development. For weeks before departing, the girls happily sewed bathing suits and cover-ups, while the boys readied their baseball gloves for morning and afternoon games. Even mosquitoes couldn't ruin the trip. Before screens were installed on the cabin windows and doors, Vollmer brought along mosquito bars, frames from which fine netting was suspended to drape over the beds. As Ralph Bierman happily recounted, quote, the activities were terrific. We played ball, swam from the pier, fished from a boat. You can't live a better life. Isidore Bush, 2 years after his discharge, paid a surprise visit to the camp to spend time with the boys in his favorite spot. Jenny Ogden Schneider, years later, fondly recalled the much anticipated train ride to reach the enormous wooden Victorian house facing the bay. She loved the bonfires and picnics, watching fireflies at sunset, and the 2-mile walks into town to buy candy and notions at the dime store. Even for Hilda Crystal, a very sensitive child who in her words considered that, quote, every breathing moment in the home was a battle, summers at Bay St. Louis were a haven. Each summer we were taken for a month to a Federation camp in Bay St. Louis on the Gulf of Mexico, she wrote in her unpublished memoir. Here with a small taste of freedom, my spirit was always quieted, especially when I sat on the pier at 7 years of age, alone, my face cupped in my hands, or as I lay on my cot, reflective and quiet. I read while others were swimming. Outside, literally millions of mosquitoes plagued us in droning armies, but nothing came to mar my summer pleasure. Hilda went on to publish several books, which she said were inspired from a passion for writing that began in the home. Her beloved memories of camp made their way into her unpublished novel, which she dedicated to her sisters this way, in memory of summer months spent in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi in the 1920s. As many of you know, for more than 20 years, the JCRS has distributed Hanukkah gifts throughout the 7-state region to children facing difficult times. Even this wonderful program has historic roots. Before Superintendent Ed Lashman died in May 1929, he made his wishes known that any money that otherwise would have gone to buy flowers for his funeral instead be used to start a fund to provide for pleasantries for the home's children. For years after his death, the Lashman Happiness Fund was used to ensure that each of the home's children received thoughtful Hanukkah gifts. It's not only JCRS's services that have deep roots in the home's history, so do these anniversary celebrations. Every year, the home marked the anniversary of its founding with a large and public event that unified and engaged the Jewish community in and beyond New Orleans. On Jackson Avenue, the home held its anniversary celebrations in its spacious yard under a cavernous tent outfitted with a platform and seats, with the newspapers estimating the crowds at more than 1,000. On St. Charles Avenue, the home's celebrations were held in the third-floor anniversary hall. When that space proved too small or in need of repair, the home presented a morning program at the spacious YMHA Athenaeum or at Gates of Prayer's Wiles Center, and returned to the orphanage for an open house and a children's banquet, sometimes followed by a supper dance for returning alumni. Just as today, the anniversary events were fundraisers. From the collection at the home's very first anniversary, worth $85,000 today, and at its 50th, worth $260,000 today, these events were crucial to meeting the home's operating expenses, as the dues collected from members were never enough. Even by modern standards, the fundraising prowess of the home was quite impressive. The unmistakable message of each anniversary event was to give to the home. It was conveyed by learned rabbis in their invocations and by noted orators who were respected lawyers, merchants, and leaders in the Jewish community. In one way or another, the speakers invoked the biblical commandment of caring for widows and orphans, mincing no words to distinguish voluntary charity from the Hebrew obligation of tzedakah. Even the decorative flags and banners carried charitable messages such as "He who gives to the orphans lends to the Lord," and "Example is better than precept." In this 1890 clipping, the Daily Picayune noted that Rabbi Max Heller, only 3 years into what would be his 4-decade tenure at New Orleans Temple Sinai, was the passionate orator of the day, and that substantial subscriptions were added to the funds of the noble institution. In 1900, generous anniversary guests reportedly responded to Rabbi Samuel Sales of St. Louis with remarkable alacrity and free opening of purse strings. No sooner had Rabbi Sales concluded his remarks urging his audience to fund the manual training school for the home's wards when the home's anniversary committee went through the audience collecting cash and due bills. The home enhanced the cash donations by its early use of auctions, enticing guests to pay handsome sums for items handcrafted by the children. For example, in 1877, Isidore Newman, the prominent merchant and future namesake of the home's training school, won a wooden desk with a bid equal to $450 today. And 10 years earlier, the auctioneer knocked down his gavel to sell a pair of knitted baby booties for a bid equal to $250 today, and to a bachelor. The community took note of the large amounts the home raised at its anniversaries. In 1885, while speaking at an event for the children's home of the Protestant Episcopal Church, Bishop John Gallagher pointed to the fine Jewish orphanage across Jackson Avenue and urged his congregation to follow the example set by the Jews. He said, "The children of the elder children of God gather together," he said with admiration and perhaps a little envy, "and in 3 hours a year's maintenance is provided." The home anniversaries also focused on its children, who participated in the events by offering blessings in Hebrew and English and giving oratorical, musical, theatrical, and dance performances. In 1868, 13-year-old Lena Adler's original composition prompted the Daily Picayune to report, "In all our lives, we never listened to an utterance so thrilling in its touching beauty." While in 1888, the children all together sang the Orphan's Anniversary Song, which formed the acrostic, "God bless our home and its noble patrons." And in 1933, David Testa and Sarah Rosenberg shared the stage at the home's anniversary celebration in a performance of Alice in Wonderland, in which nearly 100 other home children also took part. Evidence of the attention the children paid to the performances comes from one young observer, Louise Vollmer, who is shown here with her father, the superintendent, in the home's courtyard. Louise, who annotated her program, declared the 1922 anniversary, quote, "altogether one of the very best." She rated the musical performance by her best friends Annie Schneider and Jenny Vort as divine, but considered the oration by New Orleans lawyer Saul Weiss as only fair. On other occasions, the home's anniversaries featured success stories, just as JCRS is doing today. In 1896, 20-year-old alumnus Max Frischman returned to the home where he had lived for 13 years. He was now earning a living with plans to study law and already made a handsome contribution to the home. He would later marry, have children, and work for an insurance company, all while supporting the home as a member. He said, "Oh, I have never forgotten and never will forget all the happy hours I spent at our anniversaries, and the excitements and preparations filled our little hearts with ecstasy." The success story in 1923 was Louis Yarrett. He considered his and his sister's 1896 admission to the home an inherited right because his father Abraham and his aunt earlier had both been residents of the home as well. Moreover, Abraham had served as founding president of the home's Alumni Association. But after Abraham's wife died, he was unable to care for his children alone. He placed them in the home because he did not want them to be separated, and from his own experience knew the home would take good care of his children. He was right. After living 14 years in the home, Louis graduated from Newman and Tulane Law School and went on to become a well-respected judge and civic leader. He followed in his father's footsteps by becoming president of the home's Alumni Association and later was elected to the home's board, ultimately becoming its president. "If I have accomplished anything," wrote Judge Yarrett in 1955, "it is my duty to acknowledge and help the home so that future children in similar circumstances may have help." The father and son legacy of philanthropy continued. In later years, a fund was established at the JCRS in memory of Yarrett's daughter Elise, and his grandson Louis Fishman served on the JCRS board. Music, too, runs deep in the history of the home's anniversary celebrations. It was so important that at the home's 50th anniversary in 1905, the program included a movement from Haydn's Third Symphony to recreate the music that had been played at the home's dedication 50 years earlier. Rabbi Isaac Lucht wanted everything to be perfect for the big event. The home's board had decided to dedicate the newly opened Isidore Newman School on the very same day as the home's 50th anniversary, and to hold both of those celebrations in conjunction with the Conference of Southern Rabbis. To properly commemorate all of these momentous events, Lucht had enlisted Professor Ferdinand Dunkley, Touro Synagogue's Royal Academy trained choir director and Newman's new music instructor, to lead more than 12 vocal and instrumental interludes between the prayers, greetings, and speeches. But after the orchestra spent weeks rehearsing, the local union advised that its musicians would be prohibited from performing because Professor Dunkley was not himself a dues-paying member. Dunkley refused to join the union despite allegations that he was just trying to undercut the union's $5 rate for Jubilee performances. These exigent circumstances, however, yielded a surprisingly delightful outcome. 11-year-old Mike Kaplan, a rising cornetist and leader of the Holmes Band, along with more than a dozen fellow home musicians, ranging in age from 10 to 14, filled the melodic void. Fortunately, Superintendent Hyman and the board several years earlier recognized that musical training could bring cheer and happiness into the institution's daily routine. Although individual lessons in voice, piano, violin, and other instruments had long been a part of the Holmes program, its brass band was barely 3 years old, and it was handsomely outfitted with gleaming instruments and sharp military-style uniforms, all generously donated. On the big day, the home band did not disappoint. As President Gabe Kahn later proudly reported, "Our boys supplied the music in a manner that called forth enthusiastic applause, even at the hands of music critics." Perhaps revealing as much hostility to unions as admiration for the boys' performance, the Times Democrat appraised the program as equally satisfactory to anything the musicians' union could have conducted, while the Picayune went further, noting that despite the union's despotic demand and refusal to play, this band of small boys can beat many full-fledged professionals and fairly covered themselves with glory at yesterday's exercises. The home band became a popular and well-known attraction, regularly appearing in concerts and parades all around town. Before it was disbanded in 1929 as part of the Home's efforts to better integrate its children into the community and shed the stigma of insular institutional activities, the home band was expanded to include girls, such as alto clarinetist Grace Samuels, who later won a spot on the All-State High School Symphonic Band. "Our Jubilee," intoned Rabbi Alfred Moses of Mobile, Alabama, as he delivered his toast for the home's 50th anniversary. His following words are particularly fitting for this evening's musical festivities. "Our Jubilee," the keynote rings clear and distinct in the moral music of this soulful eve, and re-echoes with vibrant strains of tender reminiscences of the noble men and women who performed skillfully upon the central instrument of charity hung high in the heaven-blessed home upon the avenue this evening. Rabbi Moses continued, "The phrase Jubilee is also harbinger of hope, and therefore I praise and prophesy. May this glorious night linger long in our annals and be repeated 50 years hence, when most of us shall have joined the choir invisible of the immortal dead who did eternal good for our home. May some of us rise up like Rip Van Winkle, specters on the past of that occasion, and tell our children and children's children of the glorious events of today." Well, we are the Rip Van Winkles of Rabbi Moses's toast. We know that in fewer than 50 years, the home closed, making way for the modern era of the JCRS. Borrowing some of Rabbi Moses's words, history has witnessed the many noble men and women who have performed skillfully and generously throughout the 90 years of the home and now the 75 years of the JCRS to care for Jewish children throughout the South. These noble and dedicated men and women include the JCRS officers and directors, Executive Director Ned Goldberg and his staff, and its many generous donors and dedicated volunteers. Let us use this Jubilee to honor the past and the present by sustaining the JCRS for another 75 or 90 years into the future. Thank you for honoring me with your attention.